It all started on a cold January morning when Jasmine Carter walked into the offices of Armitage Cole, a gleaming high-rise firm known for making dreams and crushing them too. Jasmine was a receptionist, humble, quiet, always wearing that warm smile that said she was just happy to be there. But behind those warm brown eyes was a storm waiting to be unleashed. For months, she'd been ignored, talked over, even mocked in the break room by people who thought she didn't matter. Mr. Richard Armitage, the founder's son and now the CEO, was the worst of them all. He would saunter past her every morning without so much as a nod, calling her sweetheart in that tone that dripped with condescension. His favorite pastime? Making sure she felt small. But Jasmine had a secret. The morning it all changed started like any other. She arrived early, polished and professional, ready to greet clients with grace. But today was different. Richard had decided to show the board just how decisive he could be. In front of the entire executive team, he called her into the conference room, like she was a child called to the principal's office. "Jasmine," he said with a smirk, "I'm afraid we have to let you go. You're not exactly what we need here." The word stung, but Jasmine just nodded politely, thanked him for the opportunity, and walked out of that glass-walled cage of arrogance without a word. The executives laughed, thinking she'd just fade into background like a shadow. But they didn't know Jasmine had already become the biggest shareholder in the entire company. It was the irony of fate. 3 weeks earlier, a private investor approached her with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to buy out Armitage Cole's controlling shares after their stock price tumbled in a quiet scandal Richard thought he could cover up. Jasmine had worked tirelessly, investing every dime she had, taking a risk no one believed she'd even dream of. And it worked. Jasmine Carter, once the humble receptionist, was now the majority owner of Armitage Cole. So the day after they fired her, Jasmine didn't just disappear. She returned. Only this time, she wasn't behind the reception desk. She walked into that same office tower in a sleek navy suit that matched the quiet fury in her eyes. Security tried to stop her at the door. "Ma'am, can I help you?" they asked politely. Jasmine smiled. "Yes, I'm here to see Mr. Armitage. Let him know his new boss has arrived." The word spread through the office like wildfire. Jasmine Carter was back, and she wasn't the receptionist anymore. She stepped off the elevator on the executive floor, every head turning, every mouth falling silent. Richard's face drained of color when he saw her standing in his office doorway. What is this?" he sputtered, already knowing the truth. Jasmine's voice was calm, but each word was a hammer of justice. "Richard, you fired me yesterday. But you didn't know I bought the company last week. Starting today, you work for me." The room went dead silent. Jasmine didn't have to raise her voice. She didn't have to prove anything. The truth was written in the signed contract she now held. Richard's arrogance turned to pleading in seconds, but Jasmine had no time for his games. "I'm not here to play," she said. "I'm here to fix the mess you made. Pack up your things. You're done." Tears welled up in Richard's eyes as he realized the weight of what he'd lost. The executives who once laughed at Jasmine now watched in stunned silence as she took her seat at the head of the table. She'd gone from being the overlooked receptionist to the queen of the boardroom. But just as she was about to close the door on her first meeting as CEO, her phone buzzed with an anonymous message. "Congratulations, Jasmine. But this is just the beginning. We're watching." She paused, the weight of those words settling over her shoulders. Jasmine had won today, but something darker was brewing in the shadows. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and faced the window. The city sprawled out before her like a battlefield. "Let them watch," she whispered. "I'm just getting started." Jasmine Carter had just claimed her throne, but she didn't have time to savor the victory, because behind that cryptic message, she could feel the weight of a storm brewing. She'd already been tested, forced to claw her way out of obscurity. But now the real battle was coming. The next morning, she walked into the boardroom where the executives sat in a tense, silent line. Jasmine's presence was different now, commanding, undeniable. She wore a crisp white blouse under a tailored black blazer, hair pulled back into a tight, elegant bun, eyes sharp with focus. But she wasn't here to play dress-up. She was here to lead. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "There will be changes," she said, her voice steady and low. "This company was rotting from the inside out. That stops today." She scanned the room, and in the stunned silence, she saw who was loyal and who was already plotting against her. She knew Richard's allies wouldn't go down quietly. One of them was Thomas Klein, the CFO, a man who'd once laughed at her behind her back. Now, he looked her dead in the eye, feigning respect. "Ms. Carter, if I may, some of the shareholders are concerned. You're making waves." Jasmine leaned back in her chair, lips curving in a cool, controlled smile. "Good. That means they're finally paying attention." She wasn't just here to keep the seat warm. She was here to rebuild this empire from the ground up, piece by piece, no matter who she had to outsmart or outlast. But even as she laid out her plan, cleaning up the toxic deals Richard signed, rebuilding trust with clients, she couldn't shake that message. We're watching. She needed answers, and she wasn't going to wait for them to come to her. Late that night, Jasmine stayed in the office, the city lights glinting to the floor-to-ceiling windows like stars scattered across her kingdom. She pored over files, tracing every dollar Richard had hidden, every dirty deal she could find. And in the quiet hum of the night, she found it. A secret slush fund, millions siphoned off into accounts she didn't recognize. Someone else was pulling strings, and they'd left a trail. Her phone buzzed again. Another message, no name, no number. "You're digging too deep, Jasmine. Back off." She stared at the words, her heart pounding. Whoever this was, they weren't just watching. They were warning her. But Jasmine had never been one to back down. She leaned back in her chair, phone still glowing in her hand, and whispered to the empty office, "Come for me if you want. I'm not leaving." The next day, the pressure started to show. Rumors spread like wildfire in the halls. Jasmine was ruthless. She was cleaning house. She was making enemies. She overheard two senior managers whispering in the break room. She doesn't know who she's dealing with. Richard may be out, but there's someone bigger behind him. Jasmine walked in on them, and they went silent, their eyes wide. "If you have something to say," she said calmly, "say it to me." They swallowed their words, but Jasmine knew the truth. She was alone at the top, and the knives were out. Still, she didn't flinch. She called an emergency meeting of the board. "I know there are people in this company who want me gone," she said, her voice firm and unwavering. "Let me be clear, I'm not going anywhere. If you're with me, I'll fight for you. If you're against me, you're in my way." A hush fell over the room. No one dared to challenge her, but she saw the flicker of fear and fury in Thomas Klein's eyes. He wasn't just a number cruncher. He was part of whatever shadowy cabal had been bleeding the company dry. As she left the boardroom, she caught Thomas making a call, his voice low and urgent. "Yes, she's on to us. No, I don't think she'll back down." Jasmine paused in the hallway, listening just long enough to hear the real threat. "We need to deal with her now." That night, Jasmine drove home through the empty streets, her mind racing. She thought she fought her way to the top, but now she realized she was standing at the edge of a war. She parked her car in her quiet neighborhood, the darkness pressing in around her. As she stepped out, a car idled at the end of the street, headlights off, engine humming like a predator in the night. Jasmine stared at it, her breath caught in her throat. She knew then that this was no longer about business. It was personal. The battle lines were drawn, and as she walked up the steps to her house, her phone buzzed one last time. Next time, we won't just be watching. Jasmine turned slowly, scanning the shadows. Her expression was calm, but her heart was pounding with a single defiant promise. "Then come for me." The third morning dawned gray and heavy, but Jasmine Carter woke with fire in her chest that refused to be snuffed out. She'd spent the night turning that threatening message over in her mind. Next time, we won't just be watching. She wasn't just fighting to protect her title anymore. She was fighting to protect her life. She arrived at Armitage Cole that morning dressed in quiet defiance. Charcoal slacks, a rich emerald blouse that glowed in the boardroom's cold light, and the same calm eyes that had once been overlooked. But now those eyes saw everything. The boardroom was tense as she walked in. Thomas Klein sat at the end of the table, a snake in a suit, his hands folded like he had nothing to hide. Jasmine took her seat at the head of the table, her voice smooth and unhurried. Before we start, she said, I want to make one thing clear. I know about the offshore accounts. I know Richard didn't act alone. And I know there's a network behind this, bleeding this company for years. The room went silent. Thomas's face paled for just a second. Then he gave her a thin smile. Careful, Jasmine, he said softly. You're making enemies you can't see. Jasmine didn't flinch. I don't need to see them to know they're there. After the meeting, she made her way back to her office, her mind racing. She knew she needed proof, something concrete to bring them down. She spent hours digging through digital files, financial reports, hunting for a thread that would unravel the whole web. And finally, she found it, a series of transactions under a fake subsidiary. Money flowing in, money flowing out, a pattern that spelled one thing, embezzlement. But the moment she saved the file, her computer screen flickered. The word system compromised, flashing red, and then everything went dark. She leaned back, a slow breath steadying her pulse. They were onto her, and they were moving faster than she could. That night, she didn't go home. She checked into a small hotel under a false name, the weight of every secret in her briefcase. She stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, tired eyes, but fire that couldn't be dimmed. You started this, she said to her reflection. I'm going to finish it. The next day, she called an old friend, Marcus, a cybersecurity expert she'd known back in college. I need you to trace this, she said, handing him the encrypted drive she'd managed to salvage. He whistled low. Jasmine, this is dangerous. These people don't play around. Jasmine met his eyes. Neither do I. Marcus worked fast, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he cracked the layers of deception. There, he said finally, pointing to a name that pulsed like a red warning light on the screen. The Delacroix Group, a shell company, but behind it, a shadowy network known for corporate sabotage and extortion. Jasmine swallowed hard. She knew the name. Delacroix had ties to powerful people, the kind who didn't leave loose ends. At that moment, her phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. You're getting too close. Leave it alone or else. Jasmine stared at it, her fingers tightening around the phone. She thought of every time Richard had brushed her aside, every snide comment, every patronizing smile. She thought of the people who'd been trampled by this company's corruption, and she made her choice. She walked into the next board meeting with the encrypted files in hand. She laid them on the table in front of Thomas, her voice steady. I know about Delacroix. I know everything. You have two choices, confess and cooperate, or watch this company burn around you. Thomas's mask slipped for the briefest moment, his eyes going cold and calculating. You're in over your head, Jasmine, he said softly. You're playing a game you don't understand. Jasmine smiled, a quiet, deadly calm in her expression. Then let me make it simple. You're done here. She turned to the board members, eyes blazing. I will not let this company be used as a weapon against its own people. Anyone who stands with them stands against me. For a moment, no one spoke. And then, one by one, the board members shifted in their seats, eyes flicking to Thomas. Some fearful, some defiant, all of them forced to choose. And Thomas just smiled, slow and deliberate. You think you've won, he murmured, but you don't know what you've started. That night, as Jasmine left the office, she felt the weight of every step. She walked her car, keys in hand, eyes scanning the quiet parking lot. She'd fought her way from the bottom. She'd seized a company. But now she was fighting something even bigger. An invisible enemy that wanted her silence for good. As she opened her car door, a black SUV pulled up beside her, windows tinted, engine idling. Her heart froze as the door cracked open, and a man in a tailored suit stepped out, his face hidden in the shadows. He spoke just one word, her name, Jasmine. She turned slowly, meeting his gaze, her jaw set, her voice calm even as her pulse raced. I don't know who you are, she said, but I'm not going anywhere. The man tilted his head, a small, cold smile on his lips. "I know," he said. "That's what makes this so interesting." The night was heavy with the scent of rain, the black SUV's engine humming in the darkness like a predator's purr. Jasmine Carter stood tall in front of the man who had stepped out of the shadows, a man with cold eyes and a tailored suit that screamed money and power. He smiled thinly as he stepped closer. "You're brave, Jasmine," he said softly, almost admiringly, "but you're in way over your head. Delacroix doesn't tolerate traitors." Jasmine's heart pounded, but her voice was ice. "I'm not the traitor. You're the ones bleeding this company dry, destroying everything it was meant to be. I won't let you." He tilted his head, eyes glinting. "Then I suppose there's no turning back." He raised a hand, and two more men emerged from the SUV, hulking shadows in the rain. Jasmine felt the air shift, fear prickling at the back of her neck, but she stood her ground, shoulders square. "You're not going to scare me away," she said. The man in the suit smirked. "I don't need to scare you, Jasmine. I just need to end you." He stepped forward, but before he could move, a sudden flood of light poured over them. Headlights, bright and blinding. Another car had pulled up behind Jasmine, engine roaring. The door swung open and Marcus stepped out, phone in hand, his voice calm and urgent. "The police are on their way, and they have everything." The man's smile faltered for just a moment. Jasmine took that chance. "I've already sent the files to the authorities," she said, her voice steady and cold. "All your accounts, all your dirty secrets, everything. It's over." The man's jaw tightened, and he took another step forward, but a siren wailed in the distance, growing louder. He hesitated, and in that pause, Jasmine saw the truth. He'd lost. For a moment, the man just stared at her, like he couldn't quite believe it. Then he leaned in, his voice a whisper. "You think you've won," he said, "but there's always someone else pulling the strings." And just like that, he turned and disappeared into the SUV, the doors slamming shut. Tires screeched, and the vehicle vanished into the night, leaving Jasmine and Marcus standing in the cold rain. Jasmine let out a long breath, her hands shaking, but she didn't let it show. Marcus put a hand on her shoulder, his expression fierce. "You did it, Jasmine. You took them down." She nodded, her jaw set. "It's not over," she said, "but I'm not afraid anymore." The next day, the news broke like a thunderclap. Headlines screaming about the Delacroix scandal, about Jasmine Carter, the woman who had brought the entire corrupt empire to its knees. Richard and Thomas were arrested for embezzlement and conspiracy, their mugshots plastered on every channel. Jasmine walked through the halls of Armitage and Cole. Employees paused and stared at her with wide, astonished eyes. Some looked at her with newfound respect, others with fear, but no one underestimated her anymore. She called an emergency town hall meeting. The entire staff crowded into the conference room, the air electric with whispers and speculation. Jasmine stood at the front, her voice calm and resolute. "You've all seen the news," she said. "The corruption, the lies, it stops now. This company belongs to all of us. And from this day forward, we rebuild it together." A hush fell over the crowd, and then applause. Quiet at first, then growing louder, hands clapping, people standing. Jasmine felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had fought too hard for this moment. In the days that followed, she cleaned house, hiring new leadership, meeting with the staff to hear their voices, their fears, their hopes. The company was hers now, not just by name, but in spirit, and she would make sure it rose from the ashes. Late one night, as she sat in her office, Jasmine looked out the city lights, a smile playing on her lips. She thought of every snide laugh she'd endured as a receptionist, every door that had been slammed in her face. She thought of the woman she'd been, overlooked, underestimated, and the woman she had become, strong, unbreakable. Her phone buzzed with a new message. She picked it up, her heart calm. It was from an unknown number. "You think you're safe now, but there's always another game." Jasmine stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, "Then bring it on." She set the phone down and leaned back in her chair, a quiet fire in her eyes. Because Jasmine Carter knew one thing for sure: she would never be silent again. hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories that matter. And let's keep the conversation going.